Springfield's Talk 1041, and welcome everyone. It is Tuesday. My name is Nick Reed, streaming live KSGF.com. Eric Swalwell resigning amid sexual misconduct allegations, and as expected, the theatrics again of so many colleagues and staffers just shocked and dismayed. One of his closest allies in Congress had no idea. You do have the way that these situations, specifically with left-leaning individuals or Democrats, it's not just elected officials. I mean, Harvey Weinstein was a great example of this, in which you had an individual behaving in a certain manner that people within that culture, that world, knew about for years and years and years, never said anything, and then once allegation really did surface, and he really had burned so many bridges and was no longer seen as extremely valuable to Hollywood, so it was all right to throw him overboard. You had all of these people within his world just shocked, could not believe this. It was just horrible. I mean, they just were heartbroken to hear this. And then you had, really just one relatively high-profile actress, Rose McGowan, out there hollering from the rooftops. You all have known about, calling them all out. Everyone has known about, and she called out some specific actors and actresses that she definitely knew about it. And what seems to have over time, because that really looked bad on those people, it became clear that they knew something, and they couldn't deny it. And so then they had that uncomfortableness of knowing that people knew that they knew while they were pretending they did not. And some try to get out a little bit ahead of it now. We're at this stage with the way that this plays out, in which pretty much immediately you had some, very few, but some individuals acknowledge, oh yeah, everyone's known about this for a really long time. Bill Cosby, that was another example in which what we in the public had revealed to us was something that the people within that world had known about for years and years and years. And, people start popping up, and then they're like, well, yeah, I knew about it too. And Swalwell, it's the same thing with Swalwell. Same thing. And the timing of this is, we've been talking about this for weeks. Democrats were going to have to get rid of one of these top candidates in California. It's interesting to me as I hear some of this talked about, and how the California gubernatorial race is mentioned as almost an unintended consequence when it was the intended consequence. If Eric Swalwell were the only Democrat on the ballot, or he wasn't part of a dozen individuals splitting that vote, none of this would be happening right now. I mean, in 20 seconds, for those that don't know, California has what's called jungle primary, which means there's no primary by party. So everyone runs in the primary. Top two vote getters, regardless of party, end up on the ballot in the general election. Usually it's two Democrats, which leaves the people of California in the general election no option other than to vote for Democrat. This time around, there are two Republicans running and a slew of Democrats, and the Democrats have been splitting the vote. And consistently since the end of last year, the top two candidates have polled to be Republicans, which Democrats were increasingly becoming concerned would be the only options in the general election, and then they would have a Republican governor. And by the way, not that a Republican governor would be able to get anything meaningful done in California with left-wing Democrats running Congress, but it is more of the concern. We'll just do an offshoot here because I think this is kind of interesting and gives you insight into how it is that they think. It is more of a concern of signaling. And at a time when Democrats have largely accepted that there's a very good chance Gavin Newsom is going to be governor or is going to be the individual anointed by the Democrat Party to be the nominee. Having California, which is seen as a deep blue state that hasn't had a Republican governor since Arnold Schwarzenegger, who most people don't really consider to have been holding Republican values. He was certainly left-leaning. But that would really highlight, or could be used to highlight, the dissatisfaction of people in California under Gavin Newsom. Not only would Gavin Newsom, as running for president, have a horrendous track record of people with their mass exodus leaving California, with the Palisades fire, which, by the way, have an update on that, and I think only 34 homes have been rebuilt, and you've just got thousands and thousands of people that are still in limbo all this time later. The homelessness that has exploded under Gavin Newsom, who said he was going to solve the problem by throwing money at it. The crime problem in California. I mean, you could just go down the list. But the symbolism of Gavin Newsom, post-Gavin Newsom, screwing California up so badly that deep blue state elected a Republican to replace him. That's where the real concern is for Democrats, getting a Republican in there. It's not that they have any worries whatsoever of California somehow becoming a more red state, because again, the state legislature run by left-wing Democrats, and so you're not going to have anything done in any sort of meaningful way towards the positive with a Republican governor there. But it's that symbolism, while Gavin Newsom presumably would be running for president, that not only the results of his time in California, but the fact that they're so bad, they end up with a Republican governor there. And if the people of California recognize that Gavin Newsom is such a failure that they will put a Republican in place of him, what does that say he would do for the country? So that's where their real concern is. And Swalwell being one of the top vote getters in that jungle primary, they had to get rid of some top vote getter Democrat in order to make it possible to get a Democrat on the general election ballot. And the Democrat's going to win because it's California. So they don't have to get two Democrats up there. They only have to get one to face off against the Republican. And they feel as if they're going to be safe. Though you never know, miracles could happen. But their primary concern right now is just making sure that there is a Democrat on the ballot in the general election. If none of that stuff were at play, none of this would be happening. Eric Swalwell would not have been called out. Eric Swalwell would not be facing calls of resignation. We would not have all of these Democrats pretending that they're just shocked and cannot believe that something like this could possibly occur within their party. They've all known for years and years and years and years. And everyone everyone knows this is just how depraved and soulless and just corrupt that political party is. It's just filled with really gross, depraved, disgusting people. You've got to figure Eric Swalwell right now, part of it is his, the thing of this is, while you and I look at it and say, well, it's his own fault, he doesn't see it that way. Because he's in a party where this sort of behavior is commonplace. And he, like so many others, like the Bill Cosbys and the Weinstein and the Bill Clintons and these others, they get covered for until they can no longer be covered for. So he doesn't see it as if he deserves this or he has done anything wrong. And he also recognizes that, if he had decided to just stay a member of Congress and not run for governor, none of this would be happening. Or if he were running for governor and there weren't any other Democrats that were in there, or just one or two, and you didn't have these top two Republicans, none of this would be happening. He recognizes this was just a real crappy, uh, uh, you know, deck of cards that he's been dealt here. Now, you always, I suppose, this is where I find what happens now to be somewhat interesting, and why does he not talk about this? What is it that he is either promised or threatened with to not go out and start telling you the things that we're talking about here, that this isn't anything new. He's not the only one. Start calling out Epstein people he knows, start, just really blowing the lid off. Because you got to remember, California is run by Democrats. So all of look at Kamala Harris's career. The only reason anyone even knows her name is because she was the side piece of one of the top Democrat politicians, Willie Brown, mayor of San Francisco. Even he acknowledges that's the only reason Kamala Harris even has a political career. Springfield's Talk 1041. Look at the weather here in just a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 85. Tonight a 60% chance of showers with a low around 65. For your Wednesday, an 80% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high near 77. And taking a look at Thursday, a chance for showers with a high near 80.
Swalwell, not the only member of Congress to resign due to extracurricular activities. A congressman by the name of Tony Gonzalez, who is a Republican in Texas, who's long been subject to calls to resign by those within his own party. It's one of the differences between Republicans and Democrats. Now, he ran for re-election in a primary and won, despite all of this going on. But he has announced that he is going to resign, and this was allegations stemming from a relationship with a staffer that doesn't appear to have been too long and ongoing, but the gal that was the staffer, her husband found out about it, and then he began bombarding staffers with text messages and communications, kind of just trying to let everyone know. I mean, he's an angry husband that learned his wife was fooling around with this congressman, and so he did what I think a lot of people in that position would do, and really lash out. And then she ended up, in the midst of all of it, lighting herself on fire, and then she would die due to those injuries. So I think largely because of that horrific ending, though that, the way that she ended things didn't have a direct, it wasn't, the congressman didn't light her on fire is what I'm trying to say. And if it weren't for that, I don't know that any of this would have even made news, but the horrific graphic nature of the way that all that ended obviously gives it some attention and coverage. And he has decided that it's probably best for him to go ahead and step aside. And I suspect that probably some within Republican leadership said, listen, with this Swalwell thing going on, it kind of makes it hard for you to stick around, all right? I mean, when we didn't have anybody else out there resigning due to this sort of stuff, it's one thing. But now that he's going, it's probably a best idea for you to step down. Now, here is a seemingly random story out of left field, of the same vein to some degree, but I just found it interesting. Katy Perry is fighting back against allegations that she sexually assaulted another actress. Ruby Rose alleges that Katy Perry sexually assaulted her 20 years ago, a claim the Dark Horse singer is strongly denying as, quote, reckless lies. Over the weekend, the Orange is the New Black actress, that would be Ruby Rose, 40, made the explosive claims while responding to an article about Perry's reaction to Justin Bieber's Coachella performance on Saturday. She wrote on Threads in response to Katy Perry's posting, quote, Katy Perry sexually assaulted me at Spice Market nightclub in Melbourne. Who gives a blank what she thinks? After a Threads user asked her to expand on the claim, Rose wrote, after it, I threw up on her. I told the story publicly, but changed it to be funny, a funny little drunk story because I didn't know how else to handle it. Later, she agreed to help me get my U.S. visa, so I kept it a secret. But I did tell y'all she wasn't a good person. Instead, I got attacked by everyone. A representative for Perry immediately shut down the categorically false claim, quote, these allegations being circulated on social media by Ruby Rose about Katy Perry are not only categorically false, they are dangerous, reckless lies. A rep for Perry told Fox News Digital in a statement, Miss Rose has a well-documented history of making serious public allegations on social media against various individuals, claims that have repeatedly been denied by those in another post. Rose said that it had taken her almost 20 years to come forward with the claim. Quote, I was only in my early 20s. I'm now 40. It's taken almost 2 decades to say this publicly, though I am so grateful to have made it long enough to find my voice. It just shows how much of an impact trauma and sexual assault takes. Thank you for seeing me. Rose also went on to detail the alleged incident and wrote that as a woman, for a myriad of reasons, opening up about a W-on-W violence, that would be women on women, or woman on woman, and sexual abuse seems to be 100% times harder than speaking out about the male predators, at least for me. While Rose said she's not interested in filing a report, she welcomed legal action against Perry. She wrote, quote, Katie is more than welcome to sue me. She won't because it happened. I have photos, and it was literally in public and witnessed by multiple people. Plus, there's so much more that happened in the years leading up to her silly song she won't want me discussing. The psychological manipulation was strong with this one, she wrote. Now, this is an interesting conundrum, and actress Ruby Rose touches on it, in which she notes it's easy for a woman, relatively speaking, to accuse a man of sexual assault, particularly Me Too, post-Me Too, unless, of course, the perpetrator is a Democrat, then that's, a whole different story. But outside of that, it is much easier to make that accusation, particularly given that we are supposed to, quote, believe all accusers. Well, if the accuser is a woman and the accused is a man. But what happens when it's woman versus woman? Whom do we believe? We have been told it is our duty to always believe the woman. But in a case like this, you have one woman saying, I was sexually assaulted by that woman, and then that woman saying that is a filthy lie and not true. What do we do? You see, since we're not supposed to use any reliance on evidence, we certainly can't require evidence in order to believe something like this, because that, we're told, isn't listening to victims. Now, of course, she claims that there's proof, and there are witnesses to this. She says there's photographic evidence of it, which she argues, she's calling out Katy Perry. Go ahead and sue me. Let's go to court. I'll be more than happy to provide the evidence here. It's also pretty darn specific to call out the instance, call out the country, the city, the club, and then to subsequently argue that I kept my mouth shut because in order to keep my mouth shut, she offered to help me get a visa to the U.S. These are very, very specific allegations. I also found this little story that seemed to be somewhat relevant given that story, and this is from 2010. Katy Perry, quote, I don't want to distract from Me Too movement by commenting on sexual harassment allegations. Again, this is from August of 2020. Katy Perry has said she has not commented on sexual harassment allegations made against her because she does not want to distract from the real movement. In 2019, model Josh Kloss claimed that the singer, Katy Perry, pulled his trousers down and exposed his genitals at a party in 2012. Tina Kendelaki, a Georgian TV host, later claimed that Perry had inappropriately touched her and tried to kiss her without her consent at an industry party. Perry did not comment on the allegations at the time, and in a new interview with The Guardian, claimed that she remained silent as she did not want to add to the noise. Quote, I think we live in a world where anyone can say anything, she told the paper. I don't want to say guilty until proven innocent, but there's no checks and balances. A headline just flies, right? And there's no investigation of what it is. Again, so this is the contradiction, that this is the confusion we find ourselves in which you just declare certain accusers to be believed, whether there is evidence or not. And this isn't just when it comes to men in Hollywood. We saw this with Brett Kavanaugh. We've seen this on a number of different fronts. Herman Cain would be an example. You can go down the list of individuals that were told, listen, you just believe the accuser, even if we don't know who the accuser is in the case of Herman Cain. That was an effort to torpedo his presidential campaign, and the so-called accuser was not even named. And I believe it was the Chicago Tribune, or I forget what paper it was that printed the allegations. But it gets a little messy when the person who's accused is also someone that we're told we're supposed to believe. Probably the worst thing about all of this, though, and these accusations, the couple of accusations that surfaced a couple of years ago and the most recent accusations of sexual assault against Katy Perry, is that, We just collectively as a nation had that real feel good moment of visiting space and circling the moon, having human beings, having Americans travel further away from Earth than any other have, and then to have another astronaut accused of such horrible things, it just really sullies it all up and makes it so very disappointing. All right, we're gonna get a quit talking. Check on the weather here in 90 seconds after the latest traffic update. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see a slight chance for showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 85. Tonight, a 60% chance of showers with a low around 65. For your Wednesday, an 80% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high near 77. And for Thursday, a chance for showers with a high near 80.
One of you had texted in on the Pyramid Roofing Company text line that Katy Perry had once on American Idol made headlines because there was a contestant, a young guy, who had yet to have his first kiss, and she took it upon herself to kiss him without his permission, and he would later acknowledge that he kind of felt like his first kiss was taken. And so there was a little bit of controversy over that. Of course, a lot of Katy Perry fans were like, "Oh, who cares? It's no big deal." But a lot of other people were like, if that were the other way around, and that was a guy that came up and forcibly kissed a girl who had never kissed a guy and was waiting for that right moment, wanted it to be special, people, particularly on the left, would not be so accommodating. We're talking about this because Ruby Rose, who is an actress, was responding to Katy Perry making a post making fun of Justin Bieber. I think it was at Coachella. And Ruby Rose essentially was like, well, who cares what Katy Perry says? She sexually assaulted me 20 years ago. And went into great detail about where it was and said, yeah, let her sue me because I've got witnesses and photographic evidence. I'll be more than happy to go to court and for her to sue me over this. And she's been accused of sexual inappropriateness in the past. A male model claimed in 2019 that she pulled his pants down and exposed his privates at a party as a joke. And then a journalist or reporter from, I think, Georgia. So, I forget where it is, but I think from the country of Georgia. But nonetheless said that, yeah, Katy Perry inappropriately touched me against my will. And so there's a string at this point of allegations of sexual assault by Katy Perry. Now, I believe, even though there's no evidence that we know of that has been put out there, though Ruby Rose says that she has some, there is a likelihood that all of these things happen. The reason being is because the world that Katy Perry lives in is a world of largely, politically left-leaning individuals who are accustomed to getting anything and everything they want. And they go to parties a lot, they drink a lot, they do drugs a lot. Many of these people know each other. And these are the sorts of things that, particularly if you're an individual that's a celebrity and everyone's always telling you how funny you are and how wonderful you are and how much they love you and people are fawning over you all of the time, you don't feel as if doing something like this to other people, particularly if, your biggest hit that launched your career was I Kissed a Girl and I Like It, is pushing yourself off on other girls, on forcibly kissing or making some sort of sexual overture to other girls. It's not a real stretch to imagine that some celebrity like Katy Perry doesn't think that's a big deal to do that sort of thing. And she's surrounded by other people behaving this way as well. You think about those white parties that were revealed to the world, a year plus ago, 2 years ago, at P. Diddy's house, and then the real headline catchers were the fact that all of these celebrities were there, and we would learn about all of the debauchery that was taking place, sexual assault allegations, rape allegations. And of course, none of the high-profile celebrities had any idea any of that was going on. Not a single one of them. It's just amazing that none of them actually knew about it. Well, of course they did. This is the world that they live in which that sort of thing is normalized. And while it doesn't mean that it's right, it by any stretch of the imagination, it becomes normalized. And so it doesn't surprise me if you have somebody like Katy Perry that behaves that way, because this is the world that she's surrounded in. But what oftentimes occurs is that at some point down the road, somebody, be it in the moment or like Ruby Rose 20 years later, or some of these other less high-profile individuals that have lobbed accusations against her, get ticked off at her for some reason and throw it out there on social media. And they may not even mean for it to blow up the way that it does. You got Ruby Rose. She doesn't like Katy Perry for whatever reason, maybe because of those reasons, though it sounds like there was some sort of long-term relationship after that Ruby Rose claims was meant to shut her up. By way of Katy Perry helping her get a U.S. visa and so forth. And I'm going to say, particularly amongst women, one ticks another one off, and you're on social media and you see her making fun of someone, and Ruby Rose may not, just did it to get at her and to reveal this thing, not honestly thinking of it as being this massively scandalous thing as much as just a way to demonstrate Katy Perry's not that great of a person. And then it just sort of blows up, and you start looking at past history and what Katy Perry did to that other kid, and then this other male model, and the string of accusations that have occurred. And I think that it's either her latest album, or is it her? Why on earth I was even reading about this some time ago, but her career is not where she wants it to be right now. And so, this really is the sort of thing that if people are done with her anyhow, could derail any sort of hope that she has of reviving what she feels isn't the pinnacle of her career. But this is, if it is true, not a surprise at all. And I think that somebody like Katy Perry, obviously going to deny the allegations, or she is denying the allegations, if in fact it is true, almost feels as if the denial is legitimate, because she knew she was just joking around. And they took it as a joke at the time. And in her mind, she was just behaving like this is what we were all at a party, we're having a good time. Everybody was drinking. And in her mind, nothing was wrong. Nothing was done wrong, because it was just a bunch of people palling around. But now, here, they're going to take this exchange that occurred, in which I clearly didn't mean anything by it. I was just screwing around. And they're going to use it to try to ruin me. And that's the mindset that can quite possibly occur with somebody like Katy Perry. Coming up, this Dignity Act that a number of Republicans have reached across the aisle and worked with Democrats in order to, quote, fix our immigration system, which, particularly with the border, I don't know about you, but it kind of seems like it was fixed. The deportation issue is only an issue for political reasons, not for legal reasons. The law is there. The law, when it is enforced, is successful. But a handful, about 20 or so Republicans, have decided to work on this legislation with Democrats that provides amnesty. They claim it doesn't provide amnesty, and it does even much more than that. And this playbook, I kid you not, they're going back to, this is the latest, one of the Republican congresswomen who is supportive of this and promoting this is claiming Republicans need to support this to prove to Democrats they're not racists. I mean, we have gone full circle pre-Donald Trump, in which Republicans beg Democrats to like them, beg Democrats to understand we're not racist. In other words, losers. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company text line regarding the latest sexual assault allegations against Katy Perry and her response. I don't even know who these people are that Nick is talking about. Katy Perry, she's an astronaut and Justin Trudeau's girlfriend. So give you just a little bit of a bio on her. Representative Maria Salazar says Republicans ought to pass her Dignity Act, which is a broad amnesty scheme allowing millions of illegal aliens to remain in the U.S. while hugely expanding legal immigration levels to prove to Democrats Republicans aren't racist. Ah, the good old days. I don't know about all of you, particularly you Trump supporters. I miss the days in which the Republican Party was begging the Democrats to approve of them, begging the media to love them, asking, what can we do for you to think that we're cool kids? What can we do in order to convince you we don't hate poor people and we don't hate the environment and we don't hate Mexicans and black people? Please tell us, please, what can we do? Salazar told Fox News' Brian Kilmeade, quote, it's impossible if we, the Republicans, put together a bill like this one on the floor for any Democrat with Hispanics. Supposedly, Hispanics belong to the Democrats. No, not anymore. Because right now we're going to be demonstrating to the Dems that we are not a bunch of racists, that we are giving them dignity, not citizenship. First, the idea. Is she new? This idea that if we just pass legislation that the Democrats like, then they can't call us racist anymore. Are you new? Is this your first day? I have noted how Democrats seem only interested in having really stupid women be elevated in their party. This member of Congress here on the Republican side fits into that level of stupidity. That Republicans can pass some form of legislation that Democrats will go, oh, I guess we were wrong. We don't think you're racist any longer. The level of absurdity in this. Okay, and then here, how about point 2? When Republicans operated under this belief system, that we must allow illegal immigration, we must be soft on the crime of those who violate our immigration laws. We must reach across the aisle in order to win over Hispanics. See, when the Republican Party operated under that belief system, they had very little Hispanic support. Donald Trump came along, and we were all told that if he were to get the nominee, would be the end of any hope that the Republican Party could get any support among Hispanics. That what little ground the Republican Party had been able to make would be destroyed. And it would be generations before the Republican Party could ever hope to get any sort of support. We were told that the Hispanic vote would be an even greater and more reliable voting bloc to the Democrat Party than the black population. And Donald Trump was going to take us there. And lo and behold, that's not what occurred. In fact, quite the opposite. Never in the history of the Republican Party has there been such enthusiastic Hispanic support as there is with Donald Trump as the head of the Republican Party. The level of stupidity, an apparent attempt to sabotage the Republican Party by some of these Republicans that present the idea if we just provide amnesty, which of course we're not going to call amnesty, that Democrats won't call us racist anymore. And going back to the way that the Republican Party operated when it had the least amount of support amongst Hispanic voters, as opposed to continuing to operate in the way that has seen the greatest gains within the Hispanic community. I mean, this really is this is a doctorate in stupidity. This is, I mean, Mike Johnson. Dude, you're not doing your job. I mean, I get it. I understand that you are at times going to have Republicans that don't fall in line. But when you have an effort by a number of Republicans that are out there on the circuit, getting a lot of headlines and attention, that are doing everything they can to actively suppress Trump voters from coming out to vote for you, they are going to lose this thing for you, as if you don't already have an uphill battle. And the fact that Mike Johnson apparently seems completely indifferent to this suicide mission is not a ringing endorsement of his leadership skills. There are, of course, social media, but there are reports on social media that Eric Swalwell's best friend, the U.S. Senator from Arizona who beat Kari Lake, Ruben Gallego, you may have seen the Putin-style photos, the two of them on horseback shirtless together. Apparently, he was in some sort of sex worker film with Eric Swalwell, and it is set to be released on the internet at some point. Now, of course, these, it's the internet, so who knows? Eric Swalwell, for his part, he's pretty much done anyhow. But if this is true, this certainly could spell trouble for one of the other U.S. senators, that being Gallego, who has really distanced himself from Eric Swalwell in the midst of all of this. Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed, Ozarks Elder Law. Lori Rook and her team making sure that you don't find yourself at the mercy of bureaucrats, the mercy of government, at what may be your most vulnerable times. People believe that oftentimes you can just write up on your own a will and sign it, and maybe you downloaded something off the internet. That it doesn't work that way. That is not how those things work. There are even at times services or ads, and for only $199, will and trust offline, do it yourself. Doesn't work that way. If you think for a moment that the government, with all the power and authority that they have, are going to go, oh, okay, we didn't know that you did a do-it-yourself job. Never mind, we'll leave you alone. Nope, not how government works. Power of attorney, whether it's to financially have somebody take over for you in case you need that to be done, or medical power of attorney. Simply being married does not mean that your spouse automatically gets final say. All of this stuff has to be taken care of legally. What does it cost to do so? Well, the consultation to learn that is a courtesy. If you have it done with Ozarks Elder Law, 10 area locations, and they'll set up a time with you, give you a little bit of homework, things to bring to the table at that meeting, and then they'll be able to go over everything and let you know what you need to do, what it will cost to have them do it for you, and then you decide. OzarksElderLaw.com. When you understand the media and the way that the media operates, you understand why they are devoting 90% of coverage to Donald Trump's posting of an AI image that depicts him as either a doctor or Jesus, depending on your perspective, and his fight with the Pope. They are desperately doing everything they can to cause some sort of massive rift between Trump and Christians, Trump and Catholics. This is what they are attempting to do. It also demonstrates they don't understand why people who support Donald Trump, because they view things through their own lens. They view things through identity politics. That's all human beings are to the left. You are a category of people. You are a demographic. You are LGBTQ+. You are Hispanic. You are black. You are this. You are that. Everybody falls into a category. And it's always just about your allegiance to that category. That's all that matters to them. And so in their minds, people that are Christians support Donald Trump because they think that he's a Christian and represents them, and that's all that matters. That is a complete misunderstanding of why Trump supporters support Donald Trump. Trump supporters don't support Donald Trump because that's just a team that they chose. He isn't supported by people who are Christian because he says that he is a Christian. The vast majority of Trump supporters have supported Donald Trump, and many. His popularity is extremely high amongst so-called MAGA America, continue to support Donald Trump because of the way that he gets things done and his desire to win for America, to make America first, and by default, Americans first. It's what he does, not who he is, or what he says, or what he posts, although oftentimes the things that he posts or says reinforces the reasons that people do like him, and that is America first, and just having, so many of the voters for and supporters of Donald Trump are just so tired of being politicked at, particularly it's different for different people. Republican voters were so tired of constantly being told why you can't win. And, well, you just have to do this. And being a Republican means you're going to be called racist, and being a Republican means you're going to be accused of this and that. And that's just the way that it is. And when Donald Trump came along and said, no, it doesn't have to be that way, that was kind of a nice, refreshing thing for Republican voters. You had a lot of blue-collar Democrat voters or independent voters that were tired of both parties, or for Democrat workers, blue-collar workers, felt that the party had completely abandoned them, and Donald Trump was there talking about workers. It was about what he does. And when you see the media utilize something like a spat with the Pope or an AI image and just hammer away at it, it's because they don't understand that. They think, well, we finally, in fact, there's a story that, let's see, Gizmodo has, which is sort of a tech site, but it's run by left-wingers. AI Jesus might be the thing that finally breaks MAGA's faith. No. The difference between people on the left and people on, I'll say, the right or in Trump world, people on the left are just part of a team, and they're told you're righteous for being on this team. That's all that matters. Nothing else matters. We're the good guys. They're the bad guys. That's it. Now, if you step out of line, you will be excommunicated. It's all or nothing with them. People that are Trump supporters, they disagree with Trump all the time. But it's not about Trump the leader, Trump the personality. It's not even, well, it doesn't matter what he does because we're on the side of good, we're on the side. The people that are Trump supporters constantly push back against Donald Trump. Pam Bondi's a great example of that. The Epstein files are a great example of that. There have been numerous instances in which supporters of Trump, both the first administration and this administration, have piped up and said, no, we don't agree with that. The reason, however, that they don't abandon him is because it's not all or nothing. It is the overall effort and success of him as president versus the alternative in particular of making things better in this country. And while he will do things that virtually all Trump supporters can look at and say, yeah, I don't agree with that, it's okay. Because 90% is better than 0%. And when you see the left and they think, well, we really got him now. We're really going to pit these people against one another. Boy, let's just make sure those Christians see, oh, look at the blasphemy here. Look at what Trump posted. Oh, look at how he's talking to the Pope. Boy, we're really going to break them apart. So what do you think in your world is going to happen? That suddenly Republicans, pro-life people are going to become pro-abortion? People who believe in liberty are suddenly going to throw up their hands and say, I guess not. People who are for the law applying equally to everyone are suddenly going to say, no, I think we should have special categories of people that are exempt from the law while other people are held accountable. Trump supporters are suddenly going to say, yeah, let's reopen that border because I don't like the fact that he posted a pic of himself that looked like he was trying to be Jesus. It's not how that works. And if there's any entertaining component to it, it's the fact the left just doesn't understand that. Because, see, it as much as you want to believe that it's all about just Trump because Trump is Trump and it's just a bunch of little cult followers that, no. It's because overall his efforts, what he does, the successes that he has, and just the fact that he doesn't hate the country. The fact that the last number of Democrat presidential candidates or even presidents have constantly dogged the country, dogged Americans, as whether it's Obama talking about Americans that don't support him being bitter clingers, or Hillary Clinton, Americans that don't support her being deplorables, or Joe Biden, Americans that don't support him being garbage. The fact that Trump just thinks Americans are awesome and loves America and thinks we're the greatest country in the world. That right there, right out of the gate, for a lot of people, they feel that the president of the United States ought to be on our side. And the fact that the left doesn't understand that really does explain why it is that so many of their policies result in Americans having a lower quality of life.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 85. Tonight, a 60% chance of showers with a low around 65. For your Wednesday, an 80% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high near 77. And for Thursday, a chance for showers with a high near 80.
Oh, that's nice. I like that. Sarah
Yes,
Myers, everyone.
thank
Who
you.
is that? What is that? It's nice.
I think Hillsong United, I want to say.
I
Yeah,
like it.
I think it's called Oceans, but I'm probably wrong. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. I always tell you about their 24/7 emergency service line, and I had to use it over the weekend. And within 2 hours after I called, I had Austin out there at my home, and my water heater, it decided to act up. And after 18 years, it's time to finally get a new one. So the Foreman team, they are headed out to my home first thing this morning to install my new water heater. And that is just one of the many, I guess you would call it side services that the Foreman team can provide. When I was having lunch with Russell the other week, he made the comment that they can basically work on anything in your utility room. So make sure that you keep that in mind. If it is time to have the Foreman team out to your home, whether you're like me and need a new water heater or maybe some AC service repairs, make sure that you reach out to Russell today. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
I was yesterday going to go by, but I did not, so I'm just going to do a shout out for Rapid Ship Republic 5-year birthday anniversary.
Oh,
I never
nice.
know, is it supposed to be a birthday or anniversary?
I think it can be either.
Yeah, when I break it down, birthday actually seems more appropriate because to me, anniversary seems like a joint thing. Like if you're with someone, but I guess that's not necessarily the case. It could be either. So yeah, I was going to swing by yesterday, largely because they were doing free lunch to celebrate. But I got caught up, I got busy, and I just literally didn't. It was after 4 o'clock, and I thought, well, I'll just go by. But then I just ran out of time. But Adam and Michelle over there are just, fantastic. And it's where I have all, they make it so easy. And every year, the girl child since kindergarten has gone out of state to camp for what was 2 weeks. And then as she got a little bit older, a month, and we would always send her a little care package because this camp that she goes to every summer, it is one that does not allow any sort of electronics. There's no phone other than after 2 weeks, and so usually we're able to talk to her. But you can send things, but it's a very specific category, and so we would send things, and I just go in and they're like, oh, is it time for the girl child's camp? Like, yep. And I don't even have to give the address. They have it all kept and everything. And I've, of course, sent other things as well. But they make it so easy. And they're just really great people. And so I want to give a shout out and tell them a happy 5-year anniversary there at Rapid Ship Republic on 60. It's next to the Domino's, if you're wondering where it is. There's a text that came in the Pyramid Roofing Company text line. Did I throw it to you for your thing? Okay. Yeah. What I find interesting is there is more Christian outrage over the AI picture than the actual event during the Biden administration held at the White House on Easter Day, where he hosted a sex fest called Transgender Day of Visibility. I don't think that's the case. I believe that is what the media wants you to believe. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a degree of people that are calling it out and saying, yeah, I don't like this. When something like this happens, I find we can learn a lot culturally in terms of the difference between the two political parties. When people on the left come across someone or something that they are passionate about and love, it's 100 miles an hour. It is almost, it's this almost tunnel vision that they have. On the flip side, if somebody does something they disapprove of, it is hellfire and brimstone. There's no measured emotional response from the left when it comes to any particular issue. If you got the meter of 1 is calm and cool and collective, and yeah, we're good, and 10 is, go to hell, you're the worst thing ever. There's no 1.1 to 9.9 with people on the left. It's either 1 or 10. Everything is outrage whenever they come across something they don't like. I find that people on the right are not like that generally. They have measured response. So I, like you, have probably seen a lot of different postings, and we're going to go through the timeline of this stuff coming up because, Rowdy Gaines is one of the individuals that made a posting kind of like, what's he thinking? What is this about? This isn't, what's the point? I don't consider that outrage. I think that, and I'm one of these people. All right, so have you heard Trump's his response to all of this? And I'll play the audio of it. I laughed when I heard it because I was like, okay. Trump's like, hey, I thought I was portrayed as a doctor in that. That's what I thought. And you can almost tell that he's like, yeah, I know that we don't necessarily buy this. I mean, if that visual, if that's what he thinks of when he sees a doctor, I don't know what hospital he goes to. I know at Mercy and or Cox, that's not how doctors generally dress. So, maybe a Walter Reed, things are a little bit different, or wherever it is that he goes in his private capacity. But I don't think anyone really believes it. Trump just doesn't like to say, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. I screwed up. And so it's easier for him to be like, oh, it was a misunderstanding. This is what I thought it was. And I'm a Christian. And my personal thought on it is, it's probably not it's a bit of a distraction, not necessary. Certainly for some people that are Christian could be offended. I don't even know that I'm offended. Maybe I should be. I don't know. And maybe it's because it's Trump. And so I'm like, well, there's Trump. I mean, it's sort of, I look at Trump as he's an equal opportunity offender. That because he, oddly enough, doesn't take things personally, though I know people on the left think, what are you talking about? Of course he does. He really doesn't. He compartmentalizes his personal thoughts and feelings versus, his public persona. Bill Maher really, whether he knew it or not, highlighted this in the back and forth that they, of course, had. And you would see some of the postings that Trump would make on social media for public consumption and this fighting and the insults. But then Bill Maher was just shocked that actually he was really nice and he not mean to me at all. And he kind of liked me and we got along. And when you listen to people who talk about their exchanges with Trump, particularly people that have had these real public bashes, when it's not a public consumption thing, then he doesn't take any of this stuff personally. And when you are a person who doesn't take stuff really genuinely personally, you tend to be a bit less in tune with what other people might take personally. And so I suspect that Trump saw this and he thought it was kind of funny and clever, probably even thought Christians would think it was funny and clever. And so he put it out there, not realizing that that's not how it was going to be perceived. And then, of course, the media is going to try to use it as a wedge between Christians and Donald Trump. I don't think Trump meant this to be disrespectful at all. I think that he once again thought it was kind of humorous that here's something portraying him as some great individual, in this case, the greatest individual ever to walk the face of the earth. And understandably, again, you have a lot of people, particularly Christians, that, some are going to be offended. Some are going to call him out on it, as they have. But if you notice, it's just different than people on the left, that it is 0 or 1,000 degrees. There's no measured response. And so I don't even consider what I've seen in terms of public criticism from people like Riley Gaines or others as really rising to the level of outrage as much as just being like, dude, this doesn't make sense. This is dumb. Don't do this. I don't see that as outrage. That's just me. But I understand why it's perceived that way because that's the way it's promoted. And it's promoted that way in order to create those divisions. We've got to get a break, running a bit long. We've got a traffic update as well. Springfield's Talk 1041. The Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Today feels like a hard shell taco day.
Oh, yeah?
Mexicanville.
Is that what you're doing after
I
the
might.
show?
I got a hankering already.
Oh.
Right now.
We need to have them just bring some in one day.
I wish they were. I know. Well, the problem is they aren't open, this
Maybe
early.
they'll make an exception.
That may be.
You never know.
I think that would be annoying. Eat crunchy tacos on air
Well,
while I'm doing the show.
We don't know until we do it.
It's a good plan.
Yeah, I know.
Excellent.
The first alert forecast from Ozarks first meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see a slight chance for showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 85. Tonight a 60% chance for showers with a low around 65. For your Wednesday, 80% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high near 77. And for Thursday, a chance for showers with a high near 80.
Someone sent in this posting on the Pyramid Roofing Company text line. President Trump is not nor ever has been my spiritual leader. He is, however, an answer to the prayers of millions here and around the world, a wrecking ball, an executor of justice, revenge, and a reclaiming of what was stolen from the American people. They keep telling us he brings chaos. Yes, we know. We love it, and we want more. God bless President Trump, and God bless America. Another posting, the left thought a crucifix sitting in a jar of urine was art. They can sit this one out. Oh, yes, that's a whole nother component to this is the left actually is, this is the weird thing. I think in Trump's mind, this was more to sort of make a dig at the left, which I know seems the opposite. Not that people perceived it as him making a dig at Christians, but this is being portrayed as him trying to claim that he is Christ or Christ-like, which we're all supposed to try to be like. And I think in his mind, this was to drive the left nuts, that he knows they can't stand it when he compares himself to universally loved figures. And so who, in his mind, like, well, Jesus, you can't beat Jesus. I mean, clearly not universally loved, but I suspect in Trump's mind, he thought, man, nothing will drive them more nuts than if I compare myself to Jesus. And it was to just, really poke at them, not thinking that it may be something that's a bit off-putting for Christians. All right, now, I want to play some of this audio. This is actually two-part, because the first part of this is when the Uber Eats grandma showed up from McDonald's. Did you see this part of the whole thing?
Yeah.
And I thought it was just hilarious because of her response to Trump noting that, I assume you voted for me. Did you see that part?
No.
Okay. So this whole thing, only Trump. We get so distracted by the noise. Just to set this up, he's getting this, obviously is set up for the cameras. He's getting an Uber Eats delivery from a grandma. Now, I say the reason it's set up is here she comes walking up to the White. Obviously, that's not something that an Uber Eats person is going to be able to do. Just walk up on the White House lawn over to the doors there by what I think is the Oval Office and knock on the door. That obviously is something that was pre-planned. And it was to highlight the economy, highlight here is a woman whose tax burden was lightened severely. I mean, it's just a tremendous impact on her tax burden in a positive way because of the big, beautiful bill. And so at the same time, Trump is going to talk to the media, and he says to her, hey, you want to do this press conference with me? Not even to be necessarily, this is the part that I thought was funny. He wasn't saying, do you want to do this press conference with me about you or about this particular issue, but just a press conference. He tells her, they're going to want to talk about Iran and stuff like that. And she's like, well, okay. So she just walks with him up to the press. And the very first question is about the Jesus posting. And so you hear the audio at first because they're not quite up to the microphones, is the exchange he's having with her. And part of the reason that I wanted to play this audio is because he makes a comment to her about being someone who voted for him and her response to that.
It really caused a kerfuffle, Mr. Vice President.
Sorry, wrong audio. Let's skip over to here.
Great big beautiful, we should call it the great big beautiful tax cut bill, because it's tremendous amounts of money. And that's overtime. That's also on Social Security, as you know.
Yes,
And it's pretty amazing.
yes, it is.
You're really nice. Would you like to do a little news conference with me with these people? These are not the nicest people. They're not nice like you. You know that, right?
I'll do whatever you ask me to do, sir.
So the no tax on tips is something special, right?
It's very special.
And that's the one that really pertains to you more than anything else.
Yes, sir.
That's fantastic. And so such an honor to meet you. And I think you voted for me, do you think? Yeah.
Maybe. Did they not vet this person? I feel like she did not vote for him. I mean, maybe she did, but if this is someone who voted for Trump, it probably would have been a very enthusiastic, oh, yes, both times, all 3 times. Instead, you can see she's a little uncomfortable, like, I didn't know he was going to ask me that.
I heard you're a great supporter. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll put this over here. And why don't we have a news conference with the country? Heard of it?
Sure.
You don't have to say too much. I think they're looking about hormone straight and various other things. Do you have any questions?
Mr. President, did you post that picture of yourself depicted as Jesus Christ?
Well, it wasn't depicted. It was me. I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor, and it had to do with Red Cross as a Red Cross worker there, which we support. And only the fake news could come up with that one. So I just heard about it, and I said, "How did they come up with that?" It's supposed to be me as a doctor making people better, and I do make people better. I make people a lot better.
What do you think the percentage is on the odds that he really thought that it was supposed to be him as a doctor?
I'll go high, like 10%.
I was going to say 5 to 10% chance. And I feel like I might be a little generous with that. I don't know why. This is, I don't know. I don't know if other people who are Trump supporters thought that response was kind of humorous and also accept the fact that he probably did. He knew. I think he knew what he was. Like I said, I think that he did it because he felt it would annoy the left. Portraying himself as Jesus would just drive them nuts, even though they aren't necessarily. I mean, I guess they're not really considered to be really Christian-y, maybe is the best way to put it. I don't like declaring if someone is or isn't a Christian because that's a personal relationship with Christ, and all walks of life can have it. And so, but in terms of just the overall culture, and the left is more hostile towards Christianity. That's definitely fair to say. And I just, in his mind, there's no greater figure that's ever walked the earth than Christ, and to compare himself to it because they hate him so much, in his mind, that's who he was annoying and aggravating, and clearly there was some pushback from Christians. They're like, dude, this isn't cool. And so he took it down, but just really can't bring himself to admit that he miscalculated on that one. So he's like, I thought I was a doctor. There's just something about Trump and the relationship that he has with his voters. His voters get it. They understand. And like someone had texted in that posting, you know, and this is, again, the difference between Trump supporters and people on the left. Trump is not God. He's not spiritual leader. He's not the end-all, be-all. You know, the people who support and voted for Donald Trump do not look at him the way that the left looks at Barack Obama, or at least did when he was president, that everything he says is wonderful, and you can't criticize him. If you do, you must be racist, because there's absolutely no reason to criticize him. He's the most wonderful thing ever. It's not like the Joe Biden supporter who, despite the world recognizing that this guy had clear cognitive disabilities, that the Biden supporter still was like, no, he's just, I mean, you listen to people like Joe Scarborough and these others, he's the sharpest he's ever been. That's not the Trump supporter. The Trump supporter knows who he is. flaws and all. Didn't vote for him because he's perfect. Didn't vote for him because he's the Pope. Didn't vote for him because he's my minister. No, because they felt he was going to do a really good job because he loved the country and he's obsessed with success. Now, this back and forth thing with the Pope, I do find to be just a little bit interesting. And it's a separate discussion, though all of this stuff has gotten a bit tangled up. And on Sunday, the Pope had made comments that were really perceived as a dig at the United States for its attempt to make sure Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons, while at the same time liberating millions of oppressed people. And essentially, well, because I do think some of the quotes are pretty important. And Trump's pushback on it. And then there's suddenly there's this new rule, apparently, that you can't criticize the Pope. And I love it that it's coming from the left and that Trump needs to, listen, if you're the Pope or anybody and you make statements that are regarding certain current events, then you are getting your voice out into the public discussion, and people are allowed to disagree with you. I just think that's part of the fair game. It's like when people say, well, politicians' kids are off limits. Well, I agree with that unless the kid gets out there and starts talking about politics. And then, okay, you entered into the arena, then your comments are up for debate and discussion. And I think that applies to anyone, and that includes the Pope, and he may agree with that. But this idea that you got to apologize, that's, of course, I'm not really that big into the apology thing anyhow. I want a great homeloan.com. All of your home loan needs, refinancing needs, reverse mortgage needs, as those interest rates have come down just a little bit, but a lot of folks still think, no, I want to wait until they get even lower. Listen, it's one thing if you are in a home already with a lower interest rate, but if you are somebody who's been renting and you're holding off for a lower interest rate, every time that you pay your rent, it's like 100% interest rate because none of that money is going into anything that you own. It's all going towards someone else's. So you're still paying a really high interest rate just for somebody else. And while that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to buy, if those high interest rates are the obstacle that is keeping you from going from rental to purchasing, then you really are shortchanging yourself. And those interest rates aren't locked in forever. You can, once they come down, do a refinancing. And so that is a possibility. And if you don't have 20% down, you don't have to like you did once upon a time. While there are instances in which that's going to be helpful, there are a number of instances where you don't have to have any down payment. So don't let those things be obstacles to you. Any questions that you have, iwantagreathomeloan.com. All right. Now, the Pope issued strong rebuke on atrocities of the Iran war in a Palm Sunday message. And he told the crowd, "This is our God, Jesus, King of Peace, who rejects war, with whom no one can use to justify war." He said, "Jesus does not listen to the prayers of those who wage war, but rejects them, saying, 'Even though you make many prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are full of blood,'" he said, citing a Bible passage. Now, listen, I'm not the Pope. I'm a Christian. I believe that God listens to everybody's prayers, regardless of who you are. I don't think that, because we're all sinners. And so the declaration that, like, if you sin, he won't listen to your prayers, or if you commit certain sins, he won't listen to your prayer. That my personal belief is God does not ignore anyone, regardless of who they are and what horrible things that they've done. So, that's just messaging that I don't necessarily agree with. But again, I'm not, that's fine. In the context of what's going on in Iran, however, I do believe that there is an argument that it creates this sort of moral equivalency between the United States and Iran, as if it's just two sides kind of fighting, and we're ultimately the aggressors, and ignoring the horrific atrocities that have been occurring in Iran to human beings, and the fact that the Iranians, just the execution of tens of thousands of their own people, October 7th being responsible for that, the continued efforts to assassinate the President of the United States. And so when there's a conflict between the United States and that country, and it's presented as if we're the ones kind of doing something wrong by starting a fight, you can see how a lot of people would think, I don't know, that just doesn't seem right. And I analogize things in my mind, and again, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that there is moral justification when there are people that are weak and that are defenseless and that are in danger. There is a moral and even Christian justification for stepping in order to protect those people. Now, some people might argue that, well, yes, at times, but this doesn't apply, and I understand that. But I just think to myself, if you see a child that is defenseless being pummeled in a parking lot by an adult, and the only way to prevent it from happening is to step in and utilize violence in order to stop that innocent child from being killed, is that wrong? Is it wrong to use violence because violence is never the answer? As a Christian, are we supposed to say, no, stand back and do nothing, even if that means that child dies because Christ was about peace? I don't know that that's a strong argument. And while that doesn't mean it's as easy as that when it comes to war, and that anytime there are people who are defenseless against their own government or some other government or evildoers, that it automatically means that the United States of America should jump in. But I find it just a hard sell to claim that it is against the teachings of Christ and the Bible to step in and at times even utilize violence if it is necessary in order to protect defenseless people from harm and even their own death. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. I don't want to play it now. I'll play it after the news. J.D. Vance was asked, particularly as a Catholic, his thoughts on all of this, and they are thoughts that are being well received. But I do want to make one other point regarding all of this. We have spent, I mean, honestly, since 9/11/2001, being lectured to about how Islam is the religion of peace. And particularly, with Obama really kicking the anti-Christian narrative off as Christians being bitter clingers, clinging to God. And the Biden administration really demonizing Christians, specifically Catholics, infiltrating the Catholic Church, trying to turn members of the Catholic Church into the Stasi to spy on their own members, regarding them as potential domestic terrorists officially as a government. And this fear-mongering of, quote, Christian nationalism, and constantly creating this idea that in our country, particularly so-called right-wing Christians, are the real danger, while any and every time there is any discussion about Islam, we're told, no, that's the religion of peace. You don't need to worry about that. And I think about the reaction of Christians to Donald Trump's portrayal of himself as Jesus. And the Christian response is generally online saying, yeah, we don't really like that. We'd really appreciate that we just don't think that's appropriate. Versus what the response is amongst the Islamic community whenever someone even draws a picture of Muhammad. Let alone if someone like President Donald Trump portrayed himself as Muhammad. And the difference in reaction between what we're told is the religion of peace versus the scary right-wing Christians that are the real concern in our country. Springfield's Talk 1041, Hour 3. Welcome, everyone, to the show. My name is Nick Reed. Spotify, iTunes, the KSGF app, all places you can catch in podcast form the show should you miss any of it or want to go back and listen, share it on social media. You can do that. And then on YouTube, Springfield's Talk 1041, you can also get the visuals of what's going on in studio as you listen to the show, and those two are archived. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. You got home buying needs, you have home selling needs. We've talked to her before, and I've mentioned to you Will, her husband, who also is part of House Theory Realty, and these two both have their area of strengths. And Will's is in dealing a lot with big lands. You want that lake land. You want all that acreage. You want those big pieces of land that you are going to be able to raise some sort of livestock on, or whatever it is. That's really his area of expertise. And while Emily Johnson, of course, is well equipped with that, her main focus is, home purchases that aren't that, or even just a lot that you're looking to purchase. She can help with that as well. There doesn't even necessarily have to be a home on it, but you're covered in both areas, and that's really a great place to be. So no matter if maybe you're looking to move from the city or from a residential area, wanting to sell your home and then purchase one that has a lot of acreage on it and has some barns and it's all just set up for the ranch lifestyle. Again, you're going to have the best of both worlds with both Emily Johnson and her husband Will Johnson at House Theory Realty. And you can always also find them under Nick's endorsements. If you forget the name of the company or something and you just like, I can't remember, I can't find it, just go to ksgf.com, Nick's endorsements, and you'll find it there. Just a couple of other things. I'm going to read some of your text messages regarding the Pope situation. And then also this is J.D. Vance, who was asked about this by Brett Baer yesterday.
It really caused a kerfuffle, Mr. Vice President. I'm just wondering what you make of all of this and whether it's what you think of this back and forth with the church.
Well, first of all, Brett, I think the president was posting a joke, and of course he took it down because he recognized that a lot of people weren't understanding his humor in that case. I think the president of the United States likes to mix it up on social media, and I actually think that's one of the good things about this president is that he's not filtered. He doesn't send everything through a communications professional. He actually reaches out directly to the people. When it comes to the disagreements with the Vatican, look, we're going to have disagreements, Brett, from time to time. I think it's a good thing, actually, that the Pope is advocating for the things that he cares about. But we're always going to have disagreements on matters of public policy, or I should say, sometimes we're going to have disagreements on matters of public policy. The Pope has been critical of our immigration policy, but ultimately the immigration policy of the United States is set by Donald Trump. The Pope is going to have disagreements on other issues. We can respect the Pope. We certainly have a good relationship with the Vatican, but we're also going to disagree on substantive questions from time to time. I think that's a totally reasonable thing. It isn't particularly newsworthy.
This is what he says there is true, but it touches on something. This should be obvious in all reality. Yeah, they have their opinions. We have ours. I mean, really, that's what it boils down to. What the controversy that's being created isn't over the substance. It's over the two different sides. It's because it's Donald Trump versus the Pope, and how dare Donald Trump say something that is out of line with what the Pope says. See, the debate, the discussion that should be occurring, if you're going to have J.D. Vance as vice president, you're going to have religious leaders on, to me, should be about the content of it. I think that is not only perfectly open for debate, given the comments that the Pope made, but I think that it's one that we should have. Do Christians have, the Pope's presentation, as I interpret it, is that this is not a Christian thing to do, what is occurring with the United States and the war in Iran. Now, I think that what should be discussed is not, Trump and the Pope are fighting. What do you think about that? But is it against the teachings of the church, the teachings of Christ, to come in and do what we're doing in Iran? Or is that actually a biblical thing to do? Is it? Is there an argument that Christ would have the United States use its power in order to protect future millions of lives, potentially the threat of nuclear annihilation, but even liberating the people who aren't really allowed to explore openly the idea of Christianity because they are under Islamic rule? But instead, what they've done is they have created this conversation about the fact that there's an argument going on at all, which, again, coming from the left is hilarious given how they have spent so much time trashing Christianity, trashing the Catholic Church. But now that there's a spat between Donald Trump and the Pope, well, the Pope is infallible. That's what the news story's about now. You can't question the Pope. What do you think about Trump questioning the Pope? What do you think about Trump saying this about the Pope? How about instead we talk about what's being talked about? Let's not forget, anytime Christians talk about praying because of some sort of tragedy, it's the left who mocks Christians, who say, where are your prayers now? Where's your God now? That say, I'm sick and tired of these people constantly praying when there's a tragedy. It was Kamala Harris at a campaign rally in which a couple of young gals declared that Jesus is king, and Kamala Harris ridiculed them, saying, "You're at the wrong rally," to which all of her supporters cheered. Gavin Newsom's wife, who could very well be the next first, quote, partner, weeks ago talking about how Christians have set this country back decades and are a danger to this country. So for those very same people to suddenly portray themselves as the great defenders of Christianity, the great defenders of Catholicism, the great defenders of the Pope, rings just a little bit hollow. A couple of your text messages on this, and then we'll move on to some other things. I don't understand the obsession people are having with the Trump as Jesus picture. I remember not that long ago, a bunch of gays and trans people betrayed themselves in the Last Supper, and people on the left defended the image. I grew up Catholic. My great-grandparents came from Sicily. Religion and faith was everyday life, and I see nothing wrong with the Trump picture. I thought it was funny, and I'm not even a Trump supporter. Yes, so that was the Olympics, the opening for the Paris Olympics, and it was a visual, and I think it was trans and whatever, they were mimicking the last summer. But here's what I really remember about it, is when a lot of people expressed their dissatisfaction with it. The left said that they were overreacting. Some tried to claim that it wasn't even a representation of the Last Supper, which I argued the fact that everyone recognizes that's exactly what it is tells you that's exactly what it is. And it was downplayed, and it was something that was dismissed as no big deal, and people on the right just reading too much into it. But again, this isn't about Christianity. It's not about the Pope. It's not about Jesus. It's about Donald Trump. That's what all of this is about. And then another sending a link to, let's see. Oh, is this going to open it? Well, fiddlesticks. It goes back to the original posting. And it reads, "This image does not depict Donald Trump as Jesus." The original post was shared back in February, and it shows President Trump carrying out God's work in healing and restoring our nation. Context is everything. Panicans. Here is the actual original post for your reference. Now, as I jokingly So I guess here's a third way. We joked about Trump claiming that this was supposed to be portraying him as a doctor. And we estimated there was a 5 to 10% chance that that was true. That in all likelihood, he knew what was going on here. That being said, I do think that a reasonable person can look at that and say that isn't him being portrayed as Jesus, but it is being portrayed as sort of a religious, spiritual healer of the nation, of a sick country. And I think that that's a reasonable interpretation at it when you look at it. Some people may disagree with that, but I'm open to that. I can see that in that photo. One final thought. There's been a couple of different pieces about this riff between Trump and the Pope originating with behind-the-scenes discussions in which the Trump administration was trying to get the Pope on board with what was going on in Iran, and it was very clear that was not going to happen. I suspect if there's any truth to that, there may be roots in Trump's desire to do that back to the end of communism and the relationship that Pope John Paul II had with Ronald Reagan in fighting against communism. Pope John Paul II was extremely instrumental in running messaging in tandem with Ronald Reagan when it came to the evils of communism. Now, of course, he grew up under it, under Marxist-Leninism in Poland as a young person. He knew and saw the evils of it. And he made it very clear while Ronald Reagan was out there calling on Gorbachev to tear down this wall and recognizing the evil empire, the Pope was very vocal in this as well, noting that while he wasn't coming at it from a standpoint of autonomy when it comes to nations or military or warfare, but from a spiritual perspective. And the evils of communism not recognizing God as the reason individual humans have their rights. And those God-given liberties that under Marxism and under Leninism are suppressed. And so that this was a spiritual situation. And for that reason, he was very vocal against the evils of communism, against the Soviet Union. And I suspect that Donald Trump sees some similarities here. And he sees a country of Iran that, aside from our concerns regarding their desire to acquire and by their own accord utilize nuclear weapons against Israel and the United States, that there are millions of people that, much like those who are oppressed under communism and certainly not welcome to experience the life of or explore Christianity openly and that relationship with Christ, that the people of Iran are in that prison. They are being oppressed. And so I suspect there's a very good chance Donald Trump is looking at the current situation and saying, this is exactly where we need the Pope, just like we needed Pope John Paul II to help recognize and highlight the evils of communism, and that the people who are currently pressed in Iran or oppressed in Iran are not that different from the people who were oppressed under communism during the 80s. And I imagine, given Trump's recognition of the historical changes that he has been responsible for, largely through the Middle East and the Abraham Accords, it almost is this desire to replicate that relationship for the good of freedom and liberty against evil, and probably a degree of frustration that he's not able to get the Pope on board like Reagan had Pope John Paul II. Springfield's Talk 1041, the latest news update. What was that?
I don't know. I think he must have messed up and then he
He
forgot to
Was that
to
the
edit it
I
out.
didn't hear that earlier. Is that an updated? No.
I don't know. Well, they rotate usually, right?
Yeah, I think that they'll record a number of them, and so maybe we just
I'll go in
hadn't heard
there
that.
and edit it. Clean it up a little bit.
Classic Landis.
Mhm. The first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny skies with a high near 85. Tonight a 60% chance of showers with a low around 65. For your Wednesday, 80% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high near 77. And for Thursday, a chance for showers with a high near 80.
Sarah Myers. Everyone.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company's storm season is here, which means door knockers are out and about in full swing. And don't fall victim to them because many of them, they just don't have your best interest in mind. They will tell you, hey, you need a new roof. Even if you don't, which, that can then be a ding on your insurance. And they oftentimes reuse materials or they don't use the best materials. And if something fails, 6 months down the road, maybe a year down the road, it is very difficult to get a hold of them because they're usually no longer working in this area. Now, if you experience storm damage, make sure to just reach out to Josh. The Pyramid team, they offer free roof inspections. They won't make you sign anything until after you're done with that insurance process. And they offer discounts on new roof installs for our military and our first responders. If it is time to reach out to Josh, you can find all of that contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
When I was a kid, there was this. It had to be in the 90s. Maybe late 80s, but I think early 90s. And we would go to the Renaissance Festival up in Kansas City every season. And from 5th through 8th grade, I lived where we lived in Excelsior Springs, which is northeast of Kansas City, and so it was close. And my aunt and uncle and cousin lived in Grandview, and so we'd go to the Renaissance Festival, and it just became an annual thing. And if I recall, you could get in for a discounted rate if you dressed up. And one year, even though I was a kid, so I wasn't paying, the Pope must have been doing a very high profile visit to the States, because there was some newspaper that published how you could take a newspaper and make it into a Pope hat. What are those Pope hats called? You know what I'm talking about? The big thing?
Yeah.
Well, whatever that's called. The just the big tall one. And it showed you how to fold. I guess in case you wanted to go see I don't even know why. I just remember doing it and then arguing that I was dressed, I mean, that it had a connection to the Renaissance era. And so they were like, yeah, like I said, I wasn't even paying the ticket anyhow, but I was just really insistent on getting that discounted rate in because I dressed the part of that was appropriate for the Renaissance Festival. And I walked around with a giant newspaper Pope hat that entire day.
Oh. I think it's called a miter. I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I wore that puppy around. It seems like such a funny thing to, looking back on it, to have. It had to be in the paper. The internet wasn't a thing that you could just look this stuff up at the time. And so it had to have been in a magazine or a newspaper, for whatever reason. But it seemed like there was something was going on at the time where the Pope was really popular and cool, and it could have been around the end of the fall of communism, in which Pope John Paul was, again, really instrumental, along with Ronald Reagan. Margaret Thatcher had her play in it as well, but really highlighting the evils of communism, and so he was really popular, and it could have just been because of that, but it seemed as if in my mind there was some high-profile visit that there was a great excitement about in the States, and that's why it was that this paper had printed, oh, hey, when you're done with our paper, make a Pope hat. All right, we got a traffic update. The Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447-KSGF. If you'd like to text in anything, you can feel free to do so, and then we'll have weather in a moment.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks' first meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by JNS Automotive. Today we'll see a slight chance for showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny skies with a high near 85. Tonight a 60% chance of showers with a low around 65. For your Wednesday, an 80% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high near 77. And for Thursday, a chance for showers with a high near 80.
The dropping out of or suspending his campaign, Swalwell, for governor of California, leaves two of the top tier in terms of support in the polling Democrats left, one of which is Katie Porter, who is a Democrat congresswoman and just a piece of crap human being by all accounts. This comes from Democrats. She is widely known as one of the worst human beings on Capitol Hill, or was on Capitol Hill. Her husband at one point had to get a restraining order against her, which, of course, then she got one against him. But among other things, she is alleged to have thrown a pot of boiling water on him. She's a psychopath. And this has surfaced in videos in the way that she has been seen treating people, talking to staffers. She's just a bad, mean, horrible person. This, of course, does not matter to Democrats, even though she, by accounts of other Democrats, treat people as poorly as Eric Swalwell has. Perhaps not of a sexual nature, but with the same level of disrespect and potentially violence. And so, despite the fact that she is acknowledged to be a horrible person who treats other people horribly, some Democrats are calling to rally around her to be the next governor, one of which is San Francisco political columnist who posted on X that Democrats should, quote, rally around Porter. And that was shared by Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon, simply writing, "You're a freak too," which is true. I've noticed that this morning on, I don't know if it was, which one airs in the upper left-hand corner? Is that Good Morning America, or is that the Today Show?
Upper left-hand corner?
Yeah.
Upper right-hand corner, CNN, but I don't know.
Yeah, whichever one that is. Well, it's CBS, so whatever CBS has. And they were interviewing, with their faces fully shown, 3 Swalwell accusers. And now they're out there publicly. The first on-camera interview that occurred was one of his victims, survivors, we'll call them. The left likes to do that. One of his survivors, but she was in shadow. You could not actually see her. But now that the Democrats have succeeded in getting him off the ballot, splitting the ticket in California, these individuals these are female Democrats. They've either worked for him or reached out to him because they were left-wingers and wanted him as a connection as a Democrat congressman and presidential candidate. And now they're out there and they're defiant in calling him out. And I just find it amusing that for all of these years they've kept their mouths shut. Now, let's evaluate that for a moment, shall we? Most people, particularly those that are familiar with survivors of sexual abuse and harassment, don't come out publicly. Why? Well, they're afraid of backlash. They're afraid of being ostracized. They are afraid of being called a liar. They are afraid that no one will believe them. They are afraid that their careers will be over, just to name a few. When that is recognized, I think that it is important to recognize whom is it that they fear that from. Republicans? Do these Democrat interns and employees and activists that find themselves for years too fearful to speak up, Is it because they are afraid that Republicans will come after them when they accuse a Democrat like Eric Swalwell? Is it because they're afraid that Republicans will accuse them of lying? Is it because they are fearful that the Republican Party, the culture of the Republican Party, they know that their voices will not be heard and they will be dragged through the mud? They will be called names. They will have their entire background sifted through in order to demonize them and to sully their reputations? No. I think common sense tells us that they aren't worried about Republicans doing that. What does that tell you about the Democrat Party? Anytime we see a high-profile Democrat find themselves in a position like this, Eric Swalwell being the latest, and of course, Bill Clinton really was the first one that made it cool. These victims are afraid to speak out. Well, I mean, if the Democrat Party is really a party that protects women, should that not be the safest place for them to speak out? If the Democrat Party is the party that believes survivors, that truly protects women from predators, that should be the safest place in the world. That should be the safest party in the world. It should be the safest culture in the world for these people to speak up. Yet it's consistently people in that party that keep their mouths shut for fear of what will happen to them. And that fear is driven by the Democrat culture, the Democrat Party. Because if it weren't, these voices would not be silent for years and years and years until it is a political opportunity for Democrats to, again, the only reason that these, and I guarantee you that these people just did not come out randomly. They were contacted. This was, again, about winning the gubernatorial race, which meant getting Swalwell out. And I talked earlier in the program, the Newsom connection to all this and his presidential ambitions. So the only reason any of these voices are even being heard is because it benefits the Democrat Party. I think that a lot of women out there, men as well, but particularly those of you on the left, need to ask yourself, why is it that victims of sexual predatory behavior within the Democrat Party are always so afraid to come out and to reveal what has happened to them when it's at the hands of a Democrat? It's undeniable, the reasons. And what is sad, and I think it is probably not uncommon, is that the victims themselves don't recognize this. The victims themselves don't recognize what is happening here. The party that they support, the party that they go out and campaign for, because in their minds it's the party that supports women, is the party that has made them so fearful to have their voices heard that they just keep their mouths shut. Ask Tara Reade. Tara Reade, whose allegations against Joe Biden are right in line with these allegations against Swalwell. The problem for Tara Reade was that it wasn't beneficial for Democrats to get rid of Joe Biden at the time. She probably should have held her accusations until, the summer before the presidential election when they were trying to figure out how to get rid of him. Think about that for a moment. What if Tara Reade had not come public with her accusations of being violently sexually assaulted by Joe Biden, if she had not done that when he was first running for president, but instead was available around the period of time Democrats were trying to figure out an excuse to get rid of him? Would they have tapped her to come forward like these Swalwell accusers? Would she have been used in order to serve the purposes of the Democrat Party in order to get Joe Biden out of there? It's an interesting thing to think about. With all this happening, it's unfortunate that there isn't this conversation in the media and in these interviews with these individuals about what it says of a Democrat Party that creates such fear these women know to keep their mouths shut until it is an advantage for the Democrat Party for them to speak out. Now, of course, the media is all part of this as well, so clearly they're not going to make that point. And again, this is all the Democrat Party that runs around claiming it's the party that is most supportive of women. Well, except for in behavior. And as long as they do what they're supposed to do and keep their mouths shut until they're told it's okay to speak up. Sarah Myers, everyone. Oh,
Stop doing that.
well, he pauses.
It's like the third time you've done that this morning.
Second.
Okay, whatever. All right. Springfield Livestock Marketing Center, buckle up because they got a busy week out there. If you are in the market for cattle, this is the week for you. Now, they are hosting a Holstein steer special and a dairy sale today. Tomorrow, they're hosting a feeder sale, and coming up this Saturday at 4 p.m., they're hosting a special cow and bull sale with over 700 head expected. Now, if you want to check out some of the cattle that are associated with these sales, hop on over to the Springfield Livestock social media, and to check out other upcoming sales, visit their website, springfieldlivestock.com. And finally, if you need their contact information, you can just always find that under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at KSGF.com.
One of my favorite political seasons is the season in which Democrats have a clean slate regarding the presidential nomination. Because this is the period of time where all of their enemies are other Democrats. It really is my favorite time. This is when they rip at each other. The last time that we had this situation is when Kamala Harris was on stage calling out Joe Biden for being a racist and claiming that she was that little girl on a bus that he didn't want to get to go to white schools because, he said putting black kids in white schools would turn them into jungles. And they were just all really piling on him as being a total and complete racist. Not to mention, talking about the sexual assault allegations, Kamala Harris said she believed, or said she didn't have any reason not to believe his accuser. Now, this is when she was running against him. So think about that for a moment. Kamala Harris ran and campaigned for someone that, according to her own admission, believed violently sexually assaulted a young staffer. It's really someone for our young girls to look up to, isn't it? Now, this early in the season, Democrats are already out there attempting to clear the playing field for themselves, right? They look at the political opposition. For Gavin Newsom, there's clearly going to be an attempt to make sure that Kamala Harris is eliminated as quickly as possible, as she's still out there cackling about the possibility she may run for president. When you understand that this early in the game, they're gunning for each other, you see these little things pop up and you know what's going on. And an example of that is a new piece in The Atlantic. And the article is about how Joe Biden never even wanted Kamala Harris as his vice presidential pick, but wanted Gretchen Whitmer instead, but felt like he had to pick her because of the Black Lives Matter riots. Former President Joe Biden, this is according to Fox News on the article in The Atlantic, reportedly wanted Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan to be his vice president, but, quote, had no choice but to pick former Vice President Kamala Harris. An Atlantic article profiled the Democratic governor and potential 2028 presidential candidate on Sunday and reported how Biden considered Whitmer to be his running mate, particularly after her pushback against Donald Trump. Though Whitmer was ultimately not chosen, the Atlantic reports that Biden, quote, wanted it to be Whitmer and was pushed into picking Harris after the Black Lives Matter protest. Quote, all of this attention seemed like it might add up to something, and by summer of 2020, Whitmer was being vetted for vice president. She wasn't sure about it at first. People familiar with her thinking at the time told me she struggled to imagine herself as a creature of D.C. She got along well with Biden, though, and by the time he asked her to fly to Delaware for an in-person chat, she was ready to say yes. But Biden didn't ask. The report said a former senior staffer for Whitmer said the moment called for a black running mate, and how Biden really wanted the Michigan governor instead. According to The Atlantic, a former advisor to both Biden and Harris said that the claim carried some weight. In other words, an acknowledgement, whether it is true or not, that yes, it is true. The Atlantic reported that Whitmer still campaigned happily for the pair and never wavered in her support for Biden until he dropped out of the 2024 presidential election. Whitmer was reported to have been the first candidate to meet in person with Biden in August of 2020 as he was vetting potential running mates. In December, Whitmer confirmed that she went through the vetting process to become Biden's running mate and would have accepted the role had it been offered to her. Quote, if Joe Biden had called and said, I need you to be my partner and my running mate, I would have said yes. Whitmer told Fox 2 News the election was that important. This clearly is a story that was planted in order to try and diminish Kamala Harris's strength or potential strength for the upcoming presidential contest. And so this is an attempt to paint her as someone that Joe Biden didn't even want, that she was a DEI pick. Now, The Atlantic, this is a left-wing paper here. This isn't some right-wing periodical. This is coming from the left here. That she was a DEI pick, that Gretchen Whitmer was actually his pick. Notice it was still a woman. Joe Biden, he still wanted to pick a woman, but he felt backed into a corner because of Black Lives Matter, and so he had to pick someone that looked that way, and Kamala Harris was the one that he ended up having to choose. So not only is Kamala Harris an individual who got her political start by being the side piece of Willie Brown, not only did she fail so badly running for president the first time, she didn't even make it to Iowa before she dropped out. We now know that she was picked by Joe Biden not because he felt she was capable, not because she felt she was ready, but he was backed into a corner because of Black Lives Matter. What another ringing endorsement for Kamala Harris. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, I recommend that you visit their site. You can read a number of reviews, one of which is from yours truly, with the outdoor patio that we had designed and built by the crew with Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, and some of the other projects, perhaps a little more elaborate in their description. So if you want something simple, you want something elaborate, something in between, perhaps lighting for your home, or you have drainage issues you want taken care of, but in a way that's discreet, as opposed to, just running real long drain spouts away from your house. They're top-notch, they're premier, and you're going to get the best with them. You can also get an estimate on your project by going and doing a little price calculator thing to give you a ballpark figure of what you're looking for or at for your project. HunterHardscapes.com, also Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. Utah Valley University facing backlash over commencement speaker choice after Charlie Kirk's assassination. Now, this is the campus Charlie Kirk was assassinated on. And the commencement speaker they have chosen is a woman by the name, she's an author and educator, Sharon McMahon. And she was one of the individuals after he was assassinated that went to social media to say, yeah, he probably shouldn't have been killed, but, and then went on to pile on and trash him. Saying things, along the lines of, let me read. She wrote, too many Americans, especially if you're black, LGBTQ, or Muslim, Charlie Kirk was not a person who simply engaged in good faith debate on college campuses. It's important to remember that this tragedy of a public assassination does not erase the harm many experienced from his words and the ensuring actions his followers took or ensuing actions. And so now the university's like, well, we always have diverse speakers. Yeah, that's fine. But you really couldn't find anyone else? Really, of all the people out there? I mean, this is just stupid. I don't even consider this to be a pro or anti-Charlie Kirk thing. You have an assassination of a citizen on your campus, and then you choose someone to be a commencement speaker on that very campus that trashed on him after his assassination? Dumb move.